1. A dozen people outside of an ICE detention facility shooting fireworks towards the building to lure out ICE officers with a sniper waiting in the woods. Stunning details of a story outside of Alvarado, Texas, and how it fits into a larger context of violence from the left. 2. New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani's tweets, collegiate essays, SAT scores, all now coming to light, highlighting exactly how radical Democrats have decided to put someone who is going to be a candidate for one of the biggest cities in America. 3, the WNBA intent on killing the golden goose. They hate Caitlin Clark. It is Will Cain Country, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Make sure you set a reminder at YouTube. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Make sure you tune in like the hundreds of thousands that do daily on Facebook. If you're listening on terrestrial radio and for whatever reason that day your commute is different, you don't want to miss Will Cain Country. Make sure you subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. Comedian Tim Young is going to join us today. We're going to have a fun show. We got an incredibly revealing photo of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries slimming himself down with Photoshop, but it's nothing compared to what we're now seeing on social media about the Democratic mayoral candidate for New York City, Zohran Mamdani, and what that means for the left. We do not want to move forward, though, with any possibility of leaving behind the tragedy that has occurred in Texas. Recovery efforts still underway in Central Texas, in the Hill Country, to try to find the missing. The death count now well over 100 on the flooding in the Hill Country. It's now exceeded Hurricane Harvey in terms of loss of life. Absolutely tragic, and quite honestly, hard for me, as it turns out yesterday, to talk about this without betraying my emotions. There's something about 7-year-old girls being washed away from the face of the earth that amounts to the most horrific thing that you can honestly quite clearly imagine. But the recovery efforts are still underway in the Hill Country. Yesterday on Will Cain's show, I talked to Tanya Powell. She is looking for, still, her daughter, who was at a home with her longtime boyfriend and 2 friends. They were on the phone with their parents when the house began to wash away, when her daughter and her boyfriend were swept off of the porch. The 2 friends have been discovered deceased, but she's still looking today. She is still looking for her daughter. Here's Tanya Powell.
And Aiden was asking his dad what he should do, that water was coming in the house. And he then said that he needed to help Ella because she was struggling to stay on they were on the front porch. And he handed the phone to another friend, Joyce. And Joyce said they just got washed away. And then she said, tell my parents that I love them, and then that's the last we've heard from them, and the entire house is gone. It's just a slab left.
In 2015, there was a similar flood in the Hill Country along the Llano River. As misfortune has it, a friend of a friend who has become a friend over time lost 9 members of his family in that flood. Many of my friends went down and joined the search and recovery efforts on that Memorial Day weekend in 2015. What they've described for me in what they're now dealing with along the Guadalupe River is unimaginable. You're talking about mounds of debris piled 50 stories high, the size of a high school football stadium in many places. You're talking about cars and people discovered 50 feet up at the top of a tree because that's where once the water ran. The impossibility of finding the missing in this level of devastation is kind of hard unless you're there to see it for the rest of us to imagine. But I thought Bill Hemmer did a good job this morning on the Fox News channel of talking about the level of rise in the river. Listen to Bill talking about what changed at the Guadalupe River.
I just want to show you the path of the floodwaters in the Guadalupe River. So this is July 4th, 2 a.m., middle of the night, okay? What we're about to show you is a span of 6 hours, just 6 hours. Here's the South Fork of the Guadalupe River, the North Fork, as they come together and converge in the town of Hunt. Camp Mystic, as you can see down here, pretty normal looking scene, right? 2 hours later, look what happened here. Look how these rivers just bulge at the seams, one after the other, and you see how they explode here in Hunt. 2 hours later now, okay, all right, 2 a.m. to 8 a.m., just the entire area is inundated by these waters.
For those of you listening on podcast or radio, the images that Hemmer shows on the Fox News channel are kind of enlightening and yet, again, hard to imagine. I have a still frame up here in the Will Cain Country studios in Dallas, Texas. You can see behind me what a normal flow of the Guadalupe River looks like. From a Google Images level, it looks like a string of blue, a string of water, a normal river running through Kerrville and Hunt and Ingram. As that river expands, you can see the flooding push the boundaries of the river well beyond something normally imaginable, expanding into Hunt where the two forks of the Guadalupe River meet. And then just a few hours later, you can see that all the way through Kerrville, up through Ingram, and into Hunt, it looks like a lake. It looks like it would be named a lake at this point. Miles and miles of spillage over, bulging at the seams, the Guadalupe River. And that today is the level of devastation. The Texas Search and Rescue and the federal government are trying to comb through, along with neighbors and family members, in searching for their lost loved ones. Let us not forget, as this story moves on throughout the week. And you can join, by the way, Fox supportive recovery efforts following this devastation. Your donation supports the Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country's relief and rebuilding efforts. You just visit go.fox/TX flood relief. Again, the Fox Corporation has made a donation to that Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country, Kerr County Flood Relief Fund, and you can as well at go.fox/TX flood relief. In all the conversation about the flooding in Texas, another event in Texas over the weekend on the 4th of July escaped its appropriate attention, and that is a military-style ambush of a dozen radicalized members on an ICE detention facility. Let's get into that now with story number one. In Alvarado, Texas, 20 miles south of Fort Worth, a dozen members of an unidentified group surrounded an ICE detention facility, the Prairie Land Detention Facility. They conducted what is being described as a planned ambush. About 10 to 12 of the people, dressed in black military-style clothing, began shooting fireworks at the facility. One or two others broke off from the group, began damaging vehicles and spraying graffiti. Officials say the graffiti said things like "ice pig" and "traitor" and other profanity. It was all an attempt, apparently, to lure ICE detention officers out of the building. In the meantime, two other members of this group broke off, one to the woods with what we think was a sniper rifle, another from a nearby parking lot with an AR-style rifle. As two ICE detention facility officers in plain clothing came out, nothing took place, but response from the Alvarado Police Department meant one officer showed up on scene in uniform in a squad car. At that point, the sniper from the woods took aim. He shot this Alvarado police officer in the neck. He's in serious condition, but expected to recover. They later found a jammed AR-style rifle at the scene where around 20 to 30 shots were fired across the street at the unarmed ICE detention officers. Later, they pulled over several cars, found these individuals. They had Kevlar vests, several weapons. They were covered in mud. And there have been at least 10 people arrested and charged with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer. These people had propaganda, they had flyers, they had information on them saying that they were motivated by fight the oligarchy, fight fascism. This is a stunning attack. And yesterday it was discussed, paired up with what happened in McAllen, Texas as well over the weekend, where an ICE officer was shot by a single individual also dressed in military-style garb. And the conversation has been about the rhetoric on the left and how it has led to this level of radicalization. And that is an appropriate conversation. For example, this weekend with ICE operations taking place in Los Angeles, you hear L.A. Mayor Karen Bass saying things like the following.
Well, I call it a political stunt. If you want to call it a dog and pony show, go right ahead. Same thing.
With this going on for more than a month now, are you starting to feel like you're not even in control of the situation, or is there a feeling of helplessness?
No, I will never feel helpless, and I don't think anybody here feels helpless. That's not in our DNA. We're going to continue fighting.
Summer of resistance. It started the summer. You're going to go to work?
Mayor Bass, he's calling for you to get used to it. What is your...
I'm not going to get used to it. I'm not going to get used to it because last I checked, I was elected to be mayor of the city. That did not include a federal takeover. So either you believe in democracy or you don't.
Either you believe in democracy or you don't. A federal takeover. Karen Bass, California Governor Gavin Newsom, and others painting a dystopian picture, again, in their favorite narrative of The Handmaid's Tale, of masked ICE officers serving as stormtroopers, taking away good, hardworking immigrants and American citizens. The masked ICE officer element of this seems to be their favorite horror image. Of course, when there are ICE officers under ambush attack in places like McAllen or Alvarado, Texas, one might understand the threat that they're under, and people getting their identity as they were doxxed in Nashville, Tennessee by the Nashville mayor. And there is no doubt that this rising tide of rhetoric has led to the insane and violent response of many from the left. And it's not the first time in our history that something like this has happened. We actually have a deep and long history of left-wing political violence in this country. Many people have heard about the Weather Underground from the 1970s. It's a leftist radical group that executed over 25 bombings, including the Pentagon and the U.S. Capitol. At one point during the 1970s, the Weather Underground was responsible for more than 1 bomb per day. You can go back further in our history to the socialist and anarchist bombings from the 1880s through the 1920s. Here are some of the famous examples. The Haymarket Affair in 1886. It's a bomb that killed 7 police officers and civilians in Chicago. The 1917 Milwaukee bombing, a bomb attributed to Italian anarchists that killed 9 officers and 1 civilian. The 1920 Wall Street bombing, a dynamite-laden wagon exploded, killing around 30 to 40 people. If you go to Wall Street today in New York, you can still see the scars on the buildings from the 1920 Wall Street bombing. In the 70s and 80s, you had the FALN. That was a Puerto Rican Marxist group responsible for over 130 bombings and a 1975 event that attacked and killed 4 New York police officers. There are others. There's the Symbionese Liberation Army famously abducting Patty Hearst. You have the events of the Black Panthers in the 1960s and 1970s. You have the BLM-associated riots in the teens and 20s of this century. And you can see that leftist violence has a long history in this country. And for anyone that thinks that it's not a fair or complete picture, there has been right-wing violence. I do think it's somewhat of a different political nature. In the 1800s to the 1900s, you have, of course, the Ku Klux Klan. You have the Oklahoma City bombing of Timothy McVeigh, who was anti-government. You have Dylan Roof, the Charleston church shooter. The Buffalo supermarket shooting in 2022 killed 10 black people at a supermarket. But this organized campaign of terror directly tied to a political movement seems to be, if you don't ignore our history, something that should be on the alarm system of the left. And they are definitely headed down that path. I don't know how you conclude anything else when you see an ambush-style attack saying fight the oligarchy and fight fascism in Alvarado, Texas. And you would think it would cause people like House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to be a bit more responsible than the types of things he is saying on The View.
Well, I definitely think that, we need aggressive oversight as it relates to the overly aggressive behavior that we've seen, from ICE, from the Department of Homeland Security. It's not what the American people actually, in my view, voted for. Yeah. Donald Trump and Republicans promised to go after violent felons. But instead, they're going after law-abiding immigrant families. And in fact, in some cases, deporting American citizens and children, some with cancer.
American citizens and children, some with cancer. They are certainly painting a picture that would cause an individual to think it's time to strap on your Kevlar, dress in black, and ambush ICE officers. Speaking of painting a picture, when not whipping up the public against ICE, Hakeem Jeffries is posting on social media. Here's a picture of him back home over the weekend, 4th of July, Independence Day weekend in New York City. And he took the time in this photo to make sure that he slimmed himself down. I don't know if you can see that. If you're listening on Spotify or on radio, leaning against a park bench, the bench is doing something awkward behind Hakeem Jeffries. It's warped. It's like he's the Hulk, and he's leaning against the bench, and he's warping and bending the panels of the bench. Or, in the alternative, he's been playing with some Photoshop, slimming himself down and not understanding what it does to the background of his photos. Looking good, Hakeem. Looking good. Let's talk about this and much more, including Elon Musk's launch of a third party with comedian Tim Young, coming up on Will Cain Country. The Tea Party, the Progressive Party, Ross Perot. What is the history of third-party candidates, and what does it mean that Elon Musk is now ready to launch the American Party? It is Will Cain Country, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. We hope you'll hit subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. We're joined now by a media fellow at the Heritage Foundation, comedian, friend of the program, Tim Young, and fellow Texan, Tim Young. What's up, Tim?
First in-studio guest. I mean, I hope that your show gets better from this point forward, but you brought me in today. Thanks, Will.
I'm glad to have you. This is the second day of our new studios for Will Cain Country. You like the desk. You said it looks like a guitar pick.
It looks like a guitar pick. Apparently there's some sort of debate whether or not it's a guitar pick. It's a guitar pick.
It certainly looks like a guitar pick. I can't say that was the intention, but you told me it's cool if
You're
it is.
a cool guy. It's a cool show. It's a guitar pick, right?
Okay, let's lean into the idea that I'm cool. Yes. It's a guitar pick. I mentioned, Tim, that you are a Texan, like Davy Crockett. You weren't born here, but you got here as quickly as you could.
Just like Davy Crockett, you're right.
And you painted GTT on your door in Washington, D.C., which stands for Gone to Texas.
Yeah.
As many of the settlers from the 1800s did when they came to the great Lone Star State. But I also know that in a short amount of time that you love Texas, and the events in Central Texas, the flooding, has hit you at home and affected you as well, Tim.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who didn't cry about it. Last night I had the Texas Land Commissioner on my show, and she read a letter from one of the little girls who survived to her friends, and it was the most powerful thing that I've heard in a while. And everybody knows someone who was affected by this, and I want to caution people, and I'm so glad that Fox is, you have the right place to donate to. If you want to give money to this, because there's so many grifters, there's so many people out there that take advantage of tragedies like this, and it always angers me, it depresses me that people want to jump in and try to cash in on something like this, and I'm so glad that you guys are pointing people in the right direction to a good charity.
You know, Tim, I've been through some of these events as a part of this job in the past. The fires and the tragedy in Lahaina, Maui hit me close to home, and I got involved in that. And you bring up a good point. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
In how you help, because there are a lot of people, unfortunately, that take advantage of these situations. And I can say from early on in this tragedy, the Texas Hill Country Community Foundation was something that many people pointed to. I'm glad to see that Fox's relief efforts, including their own contributions and what they're pointing others to, is going directly to something that we know is going to do some good in there. And again, that's go.fox TX flood relief. You know, one of the most tragic things that I've seen people talk about, and it will continue to unfold as they search for bodies, but, you know, these 2 cabins of young girls, 7 years old, that were basically washed away were early on in their first term at camp, probably there 3 or 4 days. My wife grew up going to these camps, and she said to me, and now I've heard it recognized that this is probably going to be the case, they make you write letters home to your parents. And did they do that in the first 3 days or so? I'm not sure. But it's very probable that these parents now are going to be receiving letters from their now deceased children.
There's nothing to. By the way, thanks for bringing a comedian on for this conversation. Good booking there, Will. I just, that's the only joke I can make here because it's so sad, it's so tragic, and I just can't imagine. Like again, like just for me watching this, and I don't have children, but just seeing these little girls, like little innocent lives that are lost so quickly, and there was nothing that could really be done about it. It's just horrifying, and my heart goes out to all the families and everyone affected by it. There's untold stories too about heroes here, like the camp counselors and the folks who ran that camp who tried to save lives and lost their lives in the middle of it. This is, I wish this stuff didn't happen, but I don't know. My heart goes out to these people. There's nothing that really can be added to that. It's just so tragic to see these people. But on the flip side, again, the grifters, the people who try to cash in on this. I unfollowed a few of conservatives on social media who were posting pictures of little girls who ended up being the wrong little girls because they're just trying to get something out quick to get the clicks and cash in on X or Facebook or whatever they're trying to do. And that's disgusting to me. Like, I'm a social media guy before anything else. And when I see people, again, jumping on this, taking advantage of it, it's so gross to me. And like, I'm hurt, you're hurt, everybody here is hurt in this. And somehow these folks think to themselves, like, I got to rush to the internet and put out whatever information I can to try to get my clicks and get my numbers up. It's really sad and depressing.
You're absolutely right. And I'll just put a button on this conversation and then tying it back again to my experience in Maui. The other thing is that in that rush for attention, what a lot of people do is not just give out bad information, but they then feed the idea that there's a grand conspiracy. And there's these outlandish claims in Maui. There was claims about blue paint on the tops of roofs saving you from a fire because it was a direct energy weapon that shot down from space and caused this town to go up in flames. And there is a conversation, and I'm not going to dismiss it as conspiracy at this point, about cloud seeding in Texas, which, by the way, was going on. And we will be covering this, actually, on the Will Cain Show to let people know what's true and what's not. But the company Rainmaker, which is funded, I think, in part by Palantir, does seed clouds. And weather modification and cloud seeding has been something we've done for decades, since the 1940s. And it has a viable use in areas of drought. And the question is, did that play any role in the days leading up? They stopped this company by July 2nd. And I've had a discussion with them. They produced minimal rain compared to the 4 trillion gallons that dumped a few days later. But the point, I think, to what you're making is be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful with information.
Yeah.
Not unlike the left trying to blame climate change, or not unlike the left trying to blame Doge cuts. Blame is something that is both gross and understandable because it is the thing people turn to grasp the handrail of sanity or control. But we have to understand that a natural disaster is natural.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it just, and it's still tragic. But we can't grasp for that handrail into insanity.
There are hundreds of families who are hurting, like with a pain that not many people would understand, really. And the fact that, again, people are out there just trying to run around and push things. Like, there are actual human beings that are still hurt out there, and people who won't recover from this for years. And I just have a heart and don't share these posts that are out there that are just garbage and trying to push conspiracy theories and things.
All right, on a lighter note, it's
Thanks.
still scary, but glad to have comedian Tim Young with us here. It's still scary, but it's scary almost comedically, and that is the New York City candidate for mayor as a Democrat, Zohran Mamdani. And I think that this story is not simply a local story for New York, because it does indicate something about the future of the left and the future of the Democrat Party. And people have been combing over exactly who this guy is over the weekend. And there's a lot of social media posts and history now of Zohran Mamdani that we can now take a look at. One of which is his post on when he was in college. He said, as a contributor to a magazine, Tim, I have been forced to personally grapple with these inconsistencies during my time here. I sit in class not knowing whether to correct anyone's mispronunciation of an Indian woman's name. I usually do, but today I'm tired. I'm tired of being one of the few non-white students in a classroom, if not the only one. I bring up race in a discussion only to see thought flicker in my peers' eyes and on their tongues. They sigh without a sound. I've brought up race again. I've sidetracked the discussion. I've chosen to make an issue out of it.
So he's been attention-seeking for a long time. He's been dropping that race card for a while to try to get what he can out of it. I mean, it's par for the course with all of these people. Him, AOC, they kind of redefine who they are for the moment to cash in and get those little social justice points, and to be expected from this guy.
And I think when he applied to his Ivy League school, his SAT was a little bit below the median, but above the median on minority status. And he claimed African-American heritage, I believe, on this, which he was born in Uganda.
That works.
He was born in Uganda.
That works. You know, Elon Musk, he's an African-American too, but you're not allowed to say that from the left.
I wonder if Elon Musk could put African-American on a college application and have it be part of his admission status.
I think he could get away with it. I think there are a few people that could. Yeah, I mean, all of this is to be expected from Mamdani at this point. And by the way, I really loved that the day after the primary election, the one of the top searches in New York was, "What is socialism?" It's like, you guys are about to find out. Good luck.
Yeah, I hate that at this point we have to Google or use AI to find out what is socialism. Here's a good example. Mamdani posted on X in 2020, "Take it down," with a statue of Christopher Columbus being removed and him flashing the bird at the statue.
Why is he wearing rubber gloves?
He also posted, this is back in the days of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. He wrote an article at Slate, or reposted this article, "The Implication of Not Mirandizing Dzhokhar Tsarnaev."
So he thought he should get off of listen, if you look at that last picture, though, with the middle finger, why is he wearing a rubber glove? He's wearing like a surgical glove. Was he afraid of, was this during COVID? Do you see that?
Yes, I do see that.
What a weirdo.
He's wearing a plastic glove. I don't know.
The air might burn him. I don't know.
This guy, though, is a real radical, is the point. And he is a candidate for mayor of the biggest city in America. And it says something about the future path of the left as a movement, but the Democrat Party as a political entity, that if you're going to go down the path of AOC and Zohran Mamdani, you're pretty blatant now about what's driving your ideology.
Yeah, look, they want state-run grocery stores. They love those bread lines. They're very excited about it. You know, Bernie, where did Bernie spend his honeymoon? Wasn't it Russia? Didn't he go over there for some sweet bread lines?
I think it was. I think the former mayor of New York. They're not unfamiliar with communists. Bill de Blasio. I think he honeymooned in Cuba. I think Bernie Sanders in the Soviet Union.
You got Tim Walsh, who went to China more times than anybody else in American history. I mean, these guys this is what they love. They're going to get what they voted for, though. And that's what's amazing, is maybe we'll finally learn something out of New York City when people can't get food, when crime is running rampant, and when the city turns upside down, when Broadway productions, when the women have to cover head to toe. And you can't have any kind of, exciting music. You don't want to excite people too much either. I'm very excited just to see where this goes. Let them get what they voted for.
There's a part of me that thinks that California, New York, this is the state you live in, and the majority thinks this way. So reap the whirlwind of your politics, reap the whirlwind of your policies. But still, I mean, when this is the type of thing, this is a headline now. Mamdani claimed FBI was responsible for radicalizing infamous al-Qaeda terrorists in old posts, quote, like blaming the Jews for Hitler. So Mamdani, I'm not sure which al-Qaeda terrorist this is in reference to. It might have been Anwar al-Awlaki, the American cleric who ended up being droned in Yemen by Barack Obama. Or it could have been, I don't know. I don't know which al-Qaeda terrorist this is. I don't think it matters which it is.
No.
Blaming the FBI.
This literally shows the complete hypocrisy between the left and the right again, because the left, they can say whatever. And I mean, this guy has literally said absolutely anything and everything under the sun that he's thought of. And nobody cares. They get away with it. Luckily there are outlets like yours at Fox that cover this stuff. But if this was a right, it was you got the little.
You got a note from the producer. It was Anwar al-Awlaki.
You're not supposed to acknowledge that in your own. I'm not a professional here, Will. But no, if the right says anything a little bit off color, we get burned at the stake. We get run out of town. But this guy, he's fully in on the lunacy of the left. and nobody cares.
Yeah.
They get what they get. I mean,
no, it's not that they don't care. They nominate him.
Yeah.
No.
Well, they love it. They love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm breaking things now in your studio.
Oh, it's just my charging cords here. Second day, Tim. We're all working out the kinks here in the new studio. Okay, on a lighter note, TSA. By the way, new rules when you're flying. You don't have to remove your shoes anymore. The TSA has now taken that away from ensuring that planes are going to go down. It's no longer a threat, your sneakers.
Listen, I've been TSA pre-check for a long time. I let them run my background. I'm sure you have too, because it makes it very convenient to get through for $80. I kind of want a little bit of a refund, maybe $10 on that.
I think what's the point in TSA
what's the
pre-check
point now?
now?
Yeah, exactly. But there was that one guy that one time. How long ago was it that there was the shoe bomber? Was that like the 90s?
Can we remember his name? Richard Rodriguez?
I don't know.
Something like that. Richard was his first name.
But one guy one time tried a crappy shoe bomb, and then from that point forward, hundreds of millions of people have had to take their shoes off going through TSA.
Will.
I'm glad this is over.
Richard Reed.
Yeah, no, next, maybe we can leave our stuff in our bags since they scan it. They have the 3D scanners, too. We can just leave it in there to go through.
Well, that's what's next. Can we not have to take out our laptops and our iPads? What about the liquids?
Yeah.
Do I have to give up the toothpaste, the hair product? You
ever go through with like a half bottle of water in your bag and they pat you down and they do the whole thing where they're like, what's in your bag, sir?
But I
What's
think
in
that's
this?
on you at this point. The bottle of water is on you.
I always leave a half bottle in, though, half the time when I'm going through, because you know that even now the TSA pre-check lines.
You know my favorite story about water going through TSA? Newly signed point guard for the Dallas Mavericks, D'Angelo Russell, I believe it was when he was with the Brooklyn Nets, got busted for taking weed. I think he had it in like wax form, vape form, through TSA. He got busted. And what he had done is he created a false bottom in an Arizona iced tea can, and that's where it was. And my favorite story about this is because he hid contraband inside of contraband. Everyone should know you can't go through TSA with liquid. And in his case, the liquid led to the weed.
Look, they're not all the smartest, but they're making more money than both of us playing sports. So, like, it's fine. It all comes out in the weeds there.
So, okay, we can now start wearing our shoes.
Yeah.
Through TSA security. As long as we're on this and we're figuring out air travel, I would love it if we can figure out, the boarding process, get rid of gate lice. That would be awesome. Next.
Yeah, look,
You know what gate lice are?
No. Is it so close?
The gate agents have a nickname for us that gather around. Like, say your boarding group. But you can't make your way up to the line because boarding group 7 people are clogging it up front. It's gate lice. That's what apparently the agents call us.
They just flipped it for. I don't know if you travel American. I'm first class on American all the time because I'm famous and influential.
Fancy, yeah.
And they've now moved it so that first class is its own separate group instead of just group 1. So I get to board even sooner than everybody else and start boozing it up.
I'm not so big like you, but I'm concierge key on American.
You are not.
I am.
See, that cuts me to the core because I know what that is. It's so hard to get.
You know what that is?
Oh, I know exactly what that is. They have to hit the special button on you. I can't earn that. That's an internal. Did you walk around and say, "Hey, I got a show here"?
No, by the way, that was hard earned. It's the highest status on American. It boards before everybody else except for the pre-boards, which is a growing group of people in America.
Yeah.
And they call concierge key first, and it's usually maybe 1, maybe 2 people on the flight, right? And of course, I have to be waiting. I don't go wait up at the front, so I have to weed my way through Group 8, Group 7, Group 4 that are all up there. And but the real ego check is when they forget to do it, and they do sometimes. They forget
and you lose
to call concierge.
And you're like, do you know who
and they're supposed
I am?
to text you and call you ahead of time. Are you on time? Because the real thing is they'll hold the plane for you, depending on how late you are.
So I go back and forth to D.C. every other week, and my last flight had 9 concierge key on it. And I was like, this is the safest plane in the skies right now, other than Air Force One. Maybe even safer than Air Force One is this flight because this is your big wigs right now. Man, now I respect you. I didn't have nothing coming in
no
here.
respect
but
before.
now that I know your concierge key, gee.
That is a weekly commute to New York that got me concierge key status. I'll lose it soon because now my life is better and I do a show from Texas. But
God bless.
I have it for now.
Yeah.
And it's pretty nice. Okay, Elon Musk is now officially launching the American Party, a third-party political contender. He says he's not going to nominate, or back somebody for president in 2028, but he is going to target congressional seats. He says that the American public, by a 2-to-1 margin, wants to see a third-party option. He obviously suggests it's going to be dedicated to debt and deficit, among perhaps other things. I think he's indicated it's going to be pro-Second Amendment. But the history of third parties in this country is pretty fascinating. It's not on their own a success.
Yeah.
It's much more often played the spoiler role, most notably, as we all remember, by Ross Perot probably handing the presidency to Bill Clinton by taking away votes from George H.W. Bush.
Yeah. Look, I don't know why he can't just take over the Libertarian Party. They could use a little bit of direction. So, every time I see their conventions, I only see like the outtakes and I guess the bloopers from them where people are stripping down on their stage during presidential debates and whatever else happens at those conventions. He should just take over that party. The American Party to me just sounds like a home for crypto bros and maybe some folks who are like not really anti-government, but just maybe a place to play with money and super PACs and
most likely
pay your friends,
some tech bros. You brought up the Libertarian Party. It is interesting how little influence the Libertarian Party has actually had on American politics. Where I think most young people at some point probably describe themselves as libertarian. You may describe yourself as libertarian today. I did at one point.
Yeah.
I saw this graph, which we showed last week here on Will Cain Country, that showed it's actually not as many as people say they're libertarian. They're not in how they actually vote or think or behave.
Yeah.
That means socially liberal, fiscally conservative. If you look at quadrant graph that was published last week, I believe it was by Gallup or Pew, very, very few Americans actually live the way they talk in finding themselves in that quadrant. And the Libertarian Party's done itself no favors by nominating some very unserious people.
Incredibly unserious people. But also, where I would have at one point in my life, growing up in Baltimore, being a conservative from Baltimore, you are kind of socially liberal. But the left has ruined that. Like anything that I was pro for a little bit socially, they have wiped it off the face of the planet with how crazy they've gone and how far to the left they've gone and how extreme it's gotten when they're in schools trying to push whatever kind of gross books on children and things like that. I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm full conservative. I kind of look back and I was like, boy, was I a fool to kind of be socially liberal at some point.
Well, here's the history, by the way. We bring up the Libertarian Party. There's the Green Party that was essentially pioneered by Ralph Nader, leftist Democrat politician, was big on seatbelts and car safety back in the 1980s. The Green Party hasn't done much. I think he got, at his highest run, Ralph Nader, 2.7% in 2000. Jill Stein is the famously recurring candidate in the Green Party that many on the left point to, again, as a spoiler, that she's hurt them in some elections. The American Independent Party, see, I didn't know this, 1968, still in existence. This was George Wallace. It opposed civil rights and federal overreach. He got 13.5% of the vote and 46 electoral votes in 1968. And then there's the Reform Party. That's Ross Perot, 1995. He ran as an independent in 92. He got almost 19% of the vote. And then he ran again in 96. He got 8.4% of the vote. And so if Elon Musk does this, he's most certainly going to pull from the Republican Party.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, he's absolutely upset about Trump. And I don't know what it is. Those guys just need to figure it out. I don't, again, two of the most powerful people, probably the two most powerful people on the face of the planet, they need to get together and maybe just have a chat. I don't know what they need to do. Drive a Tesla around the White House a couple of times, hang out. What do you do to bond between Trump and Elon? Have Diet Coke?
I don't know.
Have some McDonald's? I don't know, but they got to figure it out. I don't understand why they're back and forth. Something was said somewhere that we don't know about.
The other way, though, the third party, Tim, has effect is by changing an existing party. And so there was the Progressive Party in the early 1900s, which didn't just affect Democrats, but affected Republicans. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt came from that vein of politics. Woodrow Wilson was a huge progressive. And Donald Trump, changed the Republican Party. He could have been called a third party candidate. And many wondered how would he run when he first ran. He ran as a Republican and changed so much about what it means to be a Republican. I think that's what's needed now among Democrats. Like, they don't need a third party, and they don't need a centrist. They don't need a moderate that looks at the middle position between two parties. They need somebody to look at this innovatively and differently and extremely charismatic, because there's no reforming the Zohran Mamdani wing of this. That's permanent minority irrelevance. Mm-hmm. I don't think that has a future. And maybe I'm being optimistic, but I don't think that has a future in America. So the savior for Democrats is to find their version of Donald Trump.
They don't have it, though, right now. And I don't know that there's somebody, because, again, Trump kind of took conservatism in the Republican Party a little bit more liberal. I think he is really a libertarian when you take a look at what he did. I believe he's the first presidential candidate ever to hold up a LGBT flag, but way back in the day in 2016 when he was running the first time. They don't have the character, because I think they're not smart enough to have the character. They don't have the the ground game, again, you see them messing around with the DNC and who they're installing, and they had to remove David Hogg already through kind of like a quirky way with their whatever their demographics are that they had to have going there. But they don't have an intelligent enough person to see what we're seeing right now. You know, maybe after this, I'll go call up the DNC and say, hey, for a couple million, I'll come advise you.
Oh yeah, okay. And I'm going to do, you know what, now that you bring this up, I'm going to do this later this week on Will Cain Country. So I had this conversation with a friend of mine. Let's AI for a moment the perfect Democrat candidate. I don't mean personality. Let's just grant for a moment that it's an extremely charismatic, personable, good-looking person capable of commanding the nation's attention.
Yeah.
He still has to have some ideas that resonate. Okay, give them Matthew McConaughey. He still has to have a platform that resonates. And I don't think you can AI a series of platforms that right now could garner a mass audience in the United States that leans left. So in other words, say you and I were in that building with the DNC, and we're all workshopping this. What is your position on immigration? Like, seriously, we're sitting here. Do we have a position that we can formulate, we now personifying the Democrats, that would win 51% of America?
No.
I mean, you start with, okay, guys, I think we should agree we should shut down the southern border.
Yeah.
And we should deport violent criminals? Is that going to fly?
I don't think it will. I mean, it's so strange because, again, you're going to lose. I think they pay attention too much to their numbers and what's going on social media. A lot of people pay way too much attention to social media. You're going to lose your angry crowd. I think that's who they've been listening to. I think that's where they've been basing their policy off of. That's why AOC has so much power. It's because of her social media presence. That's how she got to where she is right now. Because in person, would you rather have her or like a more, I mean, again, I'm not giving her any credit here, but would you rather have her or, you know, maybe like I don't know, just a random middle of the road Democrat that there are, I think, a few of them floating around on Capitol Hill, even compared to AOC, Nancy Pelosi isn't as left as AOC is. But AOC got more power than her because of the social media, and I think that's what they've been basing literally all of their decisions off of. So whatever the mob is screaming about the most, which is a very, very small minority on social media, that's what the left has been rolling with, and that's why the socialism stuff has been flying.
And by the way, immigration is just one issue where you can't say, hey, where can we navigate or AI generate a position that could actually win for us? Take trans. Like, okay, you're on the left now. What is the position that you're going to hold on trans issues that will get you to 51%? And I don't think you, without losing your base, to your point, as part of your 51%, you're going to have the left, and then you have to expand.
There's nothing.
And there's no position to take it. The only thing they can do on the trans thing is avoid it. Let's just avoid it like the plague. We will not talk about this issue.
What if you just put a candidate out with no policy whatsoever that just was a cool guy? Sort of like Obama back in the day.
Just no policies?
Just look, he's the cool guy. You let Mitt Romney, back in the day when it was Obama against Mitt Romney had all the numbers. He goes, the debt ceiling and all these. It was math, right? So you got the nerdy guy who understands math. It's like, hey, let's not go into debt. And then you had the cool guy. And he really didn't have much policy. He was like, hope and change, man.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's what they have to do. They have to bring out a guy with just empty policies and platitudes, and it looks good and smiles and waves.
Yeah. Can you get away with hope and change in 2025 by being cool and good looking?
No.
You're getting away with it a lot, Tim, yourself.
I know. Look at me. Maybe could they use the Hakeem Jeffries thing on me? I need to lose a few. Can you zoom me in a little bit?
Warping the background here. the Will Cain Country set. All right. He is a media fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and check him out on X. Tim runs his mouth. You did?
Yeah.
This is a housewarming gift.
Texas whiskey for your housewarming here.
Wonderful.
And you know it's real because they don't sponsor me, so I brought this in as a real gift for you.
That's really nice.
Yeah, there you go, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, check out Tim Young. Thank you so much, Tim. We'll be right back on Will Cain Country. The WNBA is intent on killing the Golden Goose. Man, do they hate Caitlin Clark. It is Will Cain Country at Apple, on Spotify, on Facebook, and on YouTube. 2 Days Dan, Tinfoil Pat hanging out with us here today. I do want to do this later today, fellas. I do think it's fascinating. And 2 Days, you're the one who socializes with the Brooklyn Brunch crew. So I think this is something that you should actually bring up. I don't know how you guys communicate. I don't know if it's over mimosas in Brooklyn or if it's on a text chain. All right, group text. I think we should use Chat GPT. I think we should AI this thing. This was a conversation I had with a buddy. Do you think you could come up with a platform for Democrats? Okay, because let's first of all lay the groundwork. Right now, the only thing that has unified the left and Democrats is hatred of Donald Trump.
Yes.
And they have changed positions on almost everything in order to remain in opposition to Donald Trump. Even when he's taken issues and moved in their direction, they've moved the opposite direction in order to be oppositional to Donald Trump. So it's not at this moment policy or platform oriented. It's simply a reactionary party and ideology defined by and given identity by the existence of Donald Trump. One day that will not be the case. And they will have to stand for something. They'll have to have a platform. Who are you? And some candidate's going to have to brand himself. And it's not going to be enough to do, I think, as Tim Young said, simply be cool, simply be charming, and simply be funny. Those elements are probably necessary but not sufficient. So underneath that, you will have to have ideas, which Donald Trump has consistently had ideas and unique ideas within the brand of republicanism. So now, go to your AI generator. Form for me a set of ideas. And in politics, you can probably get away with 4 or 5. And you are dedicated to talking about those 4 or 5. Although on the campaign trail, certainly for presidency, you'll be pushed on any host of issues. But you are going to have to come up with a position on these 4 or 5 issues that commandeers 51% of Americans and distinguishes you from your opposition. Let's presume that may be J.D. Vance, that may be Ron DeSantis, that may be Glenn Youngkin, that may be a host of Republicans who are going to throw their hat in the ring for president. And I challenge you to come up with those policies and those positions. And I would say you have to start with, what is your position on immigration? Illegal immigration, border security, deportation. Now, 2 days. You're the Democrat. Not now, I'm saying in this thought experiment. What is your position going to be on illegal immigration to get you to 51%?
Well, I mean, the thing that people can agree on is violent criminals shouldn't be in this country. I think that's the number one thing. They don't want school teachers who are here past their visa. They don't want that kind of thing. They want violent criminals that are bringing drugs in, killing people. That I think everyone can agree on the left.
Okay, you presume that be the case. I see Tinfoil already shaking his head. Why are you shaking your head, Tinfoil?
I don't think the base wants that. I mean, like, I think that his, like
ones
the
I
brunch
talk to
crew
do.
does. I think you're right. I agree. Those kind of people do, but I think there are a lot of people in the base who are just against. I mean, you've seen the support for violent criminals who are illegal immigrants. So it's like, I don't think that
Explain
they really
Kilmar.
care.
Explain Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Okay,
Right.
You say, well,
Misinformation.
he was accused
thing.
of domestic violence.
Yeah.
What?
Misinformation thing. I mean, they are against it now, but at first, when they hear stories like that, they hear the father's story, and then their minds change. You know what I'm saying? So it is.
They're championing him today. As recently as today, they are still championing him. And at a minimum, what we know is he's facing charges on human trafficking. So set everything else aside. That in and of itself should be a level of criminality that you would think is necessary for deportation to get to 51%. I'm not sure that you could be a Democrat and say that right now. Is there any Democrat saying that you should deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia? Like, I'm curious. Who is a Democrat that is saying that right now, that he should be deported?
Not even the brunch crew, actually, now that I think about it.
Thinks you should deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
They do not, yeah. They just don't believe his ties to MS-13. Yeah.
Well, okay, so Dan, just take him for example.
Sure.
If that's your position, I think you've lost the immigration issue.
Sure.
I think you are now well below 50%.
Yep.
Well below. Because, and CNN is running this stuff, over 50% of Americans believe that you should deport all illegal immigrants. We're not just talking about the violent criminals, right? So I was trying to do a layup here. You know, I think a Democrat could get 51%, retain his base by giving lip service to, I'm going to commit to securing the southern border. I think you could.
Like Obama.
I think you could do that.
Yes.
Even you could go, I think a Democrat could go as far as saying, I'm going to build a wall. I think you can say
No
that
way.
as a Democrat and still.
No.
I think you could.
Because that's Trump saying, that's Trump's words. They would never go for that. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a good point. But point is, I'm giving you the layups, and the Democrats are having a hard time getting to the layups. You know?
Yeah.
Southern border secure, deport violent criminals. The next step is deporting illegal immigrants. Like, again, a majority proposition in the United States. And there's no way you could get a Democrat, any Democrat, to do that without completely losing his base, right? Like, that issue right there, I think illustrates. I think the trans issue is another one. Find for me the position that gets you to 51% and is acceptable to the left. Find
tough
for me that position.
I mean, hate has been better than love lately with them. They, like you said, their hatred for Donald Trump gets them through this whole thing. They don't have someone to get behind, so there's no love for anything. So there's no unifying factor. So hate has gotten them through, which is funny because they are the party of compassion, so they say.
Right. We should do this later this week. We should go through a bunch of issues, like 4 or 5 issues, and see if you can AI generate a Democrat candidate that could actually get the majority of America. All right. Meanwhile, the WNBA seems intent on killing the golden goose. Yesterday, I appeared on Tommy Lahren is Fearless, which kicks off here in about 6 minutes over at foxnews.com. And she asked me about the WNBA. And it occurred to me, and what I ended up sharing with her is the level of entitlement involved in the WNBA is one of the biggest turnoffs for any fan watching the WNBA. That entitlement is illustrated, I think, in 3 main fashions. One, it is a league that has never once turned a profit. Not once. It has operated in the red every year since its existence. The only way it has remained as an ongoing enterprise is because of subsidies from the NBA. Every year, NBA owners contribute a certain amount of money to keeping the WNBA in business. And amidst that position, and I mean, you can extrapolate that position to anybody that lives on charity, right? You live on charity, you should probably not look the gift horse in the mouth. You shouldn't complain about salary disparities between you and LeBron James. You know, you shouldn't be acting like you're a superstar, which takes me to number 2. There's videos of, for example, Kelsey Plum, like reluctantly signing autographs and taking photos with fans. You should be eating that up. If you've ever seen any of these startup leagues, like, you know, indoor soccer, that was a thing kind of in the 80s or 90s in America. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Like small-sided indoor soccer, bounce it off the walls.
Yeah.
Those dudes worked the crowd trying to be close with their fans. And you see that in every startup sport. And that should be the case for the WNBA, not this entitlement to stardom. And then finally is the way they've reacted to the one true sports figure that could put them on the national map, and that is Caitlin Clark. Christine Brennan of USA Today was on Fox News talking about this, and she said, Caitlin Clark is more important to the WNBA than Michael Jordan was to the NBA or Wayne Gretzky was to the NHL. And I think that's true. Jordan put the NBA on the map, made it a global superstar sport. But he wasn't starting from scratch. Magic and Bird had already changed it into a sport that got national attention. And LeBron took the mantle from Jordan and continued it as a major entertainment enterprise. Wayne Gretzky did the same for hockey. And I think you could say that, like Jordan, without Gretzky, both of those sports have suffered from the same type of relevance after their retirement. But there's nothing before Caitlin Clark. I know we can point to quote-unquote stars and really good basketball players in the WNBA. Cheryl Swoops, Cheryl Miller, others. But let's be real about their level of stardom as compared to Caitlin Clark. Let's be real. You can look at ratings in games that feature Caitlin Clark and don't. You can look at attendance. You can look at merchandise. And it is stark. The ladies of the WNBA just voted Caitlin Clark 9th in All-Star voting at her position. According to the ladies of the WNBA, she is the 9th best guard.
Fascinating.
In their league. They hate Caitlin Clark, and they're determined to kill their golden goose. Go ahead, 2 days.
Well, what about Paige Bueckers, though? I know we talked about this, but she kind of, what did you say? Like, she kind of, like, bowed to the pressure of certain social issues and things like that, right? So that's why they're not hating her as much.
I don't know the full Paige Becker's story.
She's playing great.
You mean why is she not treated the same as Caitlin Clark?
I mean,
she's good. She's not as good as Caitlin Clark.
Right now she's playing better, almost. They're both averaging 18.2 points per game. She's averaging 5.5 assists per game, 4.2 rebounds a game. That's pretty close to what Caitlin Clark's doing.
On a Dallas team that's really bad, by the way.
True.
And she's like one of the only stars. I think the Indiana Fever has some other people as well on their team besides Caitlin Clark. In fact, I think they voted one of the other Indiana Fever guards over Caitlin Clark in that All-Star voting.
Yeah.
By the way, luckily, Caitlin Clark was the #1 fan voting by far.
Caitlin's more fun to watch,
that
too.
Overrode. Because she's the Steph Curry
she's
of
electric.
the WNBA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This league does not have a future if they're intent on rejecting Caitlin Clark. They should be kissing the ground that she walks on. And the fact that they don't think that's true shows how entitled and lost they are and what a loser future is in store for the WNBA. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on Will Cain Country. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review if you think it's so well deserved. And we will see you again next time.